Hello, good evening, and welcome to the Majority Show. My name is Mark Devlin. I'm your host for tonight. We have a great show for you today, going out live to you all on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter. I'm here tonight with the co-hosts, Mary Devlin and David Griffiths. How are you both tonight?
Well, I'm very well.
David?
I'm very well also, yep. Can't complain.
It's nice to be back.
Oh, it is nice to be back. Anyway, so what are we going to be talking about tonight, Mary?
Well, tonight I'm going to be talking about alcohol deaths in Scotland, the minimum unit pricing, and how ScotGov has tried to mislead us with the results.
Oh, well, that's not a big surprise, is it? David, what are you going
Tonight,
with?
I will be taking a look at the newly appointed SNP Chief Executive Officer, Murray Foote.
Okay, and I think in general we're going to be talking about the SNP's accounts and all the mysterious things that are in there.
Indeed.
And of course we have Zoomer of the Week.
That's right. We'll be back with all this and much more in just a few seconds. If I can find the titles. There we go. Right, welcome back to the Majority Show, Scotland's #1 politics chat discussion, and a lot of fun we usually have on the show. We've been away for 2 weeks in various places. Mary, where did we go to? We went to the Lake District. How was that?
The Lake District was lovely. I really enjoyed it. It's like a little mini Scotland, and we spent some time around Ullswater, which was beautiful.
Yes.
And I love the fact it's only 2 hours from Glasgow.
Yeah, it's very nice. It's like being in, I describe it like being in a watercolour painting or something.
Indeed.
It was a bit like that. And of course, free from the influence of Scottish nationalism, which is always good. There, David, what have you been up to lately?
Well, earlier this month I celebrated my birthday, which was very pleasant.
Yes.
I spent a drunken day and evening in Troon with some real heavy drinking.
That's terrible. Can't imagine who that could have been.
Indeed. So yes, a lot of work also in the rental properties. You remember that flat which I told you about, which had been pretty much turned into a rubbish tip. Well, we've actually got it almost tenant ready. So some real unpleasant work went into that, but we got it almost ready. So just a couple.
Okay, good.
So that's a really good effort. But most importantly, I've produced the first draft of something I've talked about before, which is the pro-UK tactical voting guide by constituency, the purpose of which is to focus the pro-UK vote across every constituency in Scotland at the next election so that one candidate has a real chance of challenging the SNP. And of course, the advantage of tactical voting, if it's embraced widely, is that even if your vote share across the board falls, you can still, with tactical voting, focused on the correct constituencies, you can still increase.
So you're making a list of target seats?
Very much so. So I have all 57 seats, and I've identified in each one which party is best placed to challenge the SNP. And there's some real crackers in there. I think Labour stands an excellent chance of making some real gains. I'm talking about, dozens of seats. And even the Conservatives, who have 6 seats currently, given that their vote share will almost certainly fall, they don't necessarily have to lose seats, and they could in fact increase, as could the Lib Dems, if it's embraced correctly. So much more about this in weeks to come.
Well, it's always a challenge to get voters to do that, but it does work in some cases. For example, Jackie Bailey's seat last year, and it wasn't last year, was it? It was 2 years ago.
It was 2 years ago.
Yes,
21.
and Jackie Bailey was able to maintain her seat basis on tactical voting, which denied the SNP an overall majority. So it does work, even if it only works in one seat, it can be swing the balance there. If you're watching the show on YouTube, you can get a shout out, super thanks, or a super sticker donation. By the way, thank you to everyone who's put your messages down below there saying welcome back. It's really great to hear from you all. Actually, we were a little bit nervous of starting the show again because we hadn't done it for a while, but we're glad to have your support. That's great. So anyway, if you are on YouTube, please, you can get a shout out with super thanks or super sticker donation. If you're not on YouTube, please go to the Majority site where you can pledge a monthly or one-time donation. And we have a new thing, which is that donations just start from £2 a month. So, I mean, it's not expensive to support the show. So if you like to, what was that, Mary?
Well, there's a lot of people who, don't know how they can help. And we know that money's tight. So, if you haven't made, a donation before, then we're really hoping that £2 a month will be affordable by most people.
That's right. Well, everything helps. I always say that everything, big or small, helps.
Yeah, indeed. And as we also say, sharing is caring. Caring is sharing, I guess. Wherever you are, please like, share, comment, and tell your friends. Extend the reach of the show at the click of one button.
Right.
And as usual, a huge thanks to UK Union Voice and United Against Separation Facebook pages, where many of you will be watching from tonight. Hopefully you won't be working, you'll just be watching.
Oh, yeah, I think that was supposed to be my bit.
And as usual, I'll be handling all your comments tonight. So please keep them short and snappy, and I'll try to get as many up on the screen as I can.
Okay, right. Okay, so lots to talk about on the show today. We look forward to your comments, and we will be back in just a second. Right, okay. Last week, just some updates that we released a full edit of my interview with Tom Gallagher, we played a little bit of that in the last show. The full thing's about 50 minutes, and I really recommend that you watch it. It is really very good. We talk about the dearth of European leadership since the Cold War period, and Nicola Sturgeon's rise and fall and her place in that. And one of Tom's main points is that politicians have become increasingly disconnected with what their voters want, even their own supporters in many cases, and have become more and more beholden to global fads. For example, we can see this out every day. We see the Sadiq Khan in London, who is putting the ULEZ in against, nobody wants this thing at all, except perhaps a tiny minority of global leaders who might want that, or perhaps, maybe to be more cynical, those who are getting paid to install the systems. But in Scotland, we had Nicola Sturgeon, who was beholden to climate change agenda and a transgender agenda, which are actually imports, if you think about it, imports from the US particularly. And of course, that's very different from her actual remit, which was, of course, to gain independence from the UK, or to break up the UK, to be more precise. David, you've noticed this disconnect in your travels?
Very much so. And what you see these days is politicians who have the cheek to present policies which the public might like are dismissed as populist, as if it's an insult. I mean, it's quite bizarre. You've got it's increasing nanny state politics, particularly in Scotland. They know what's best for you. We saw it all throughout COVID. We see it exactly with the policies you've just described there. And so, yeah, massive disconnect. And Tom's book, I mean, as it says, you mentioned it talks about the dearth of talent, I guess, and leadership in European politics, but it's very, very you get a sense of real doom by reading it. I mean, it's a fabulous book, as I said 3 weeks ago. The sections, each one in turn, says so much about the individual person. I find it fascinating. Tom's so knowledgeable about this stuff. It's amazing. He obviously started writing the Sturgeon section before she'd left, but he very secretly turned it around at the end to include the part where she actually stepped down. But the common theme throughout is that what we see from political leaders these days is not statesmanship. It's the art of spin and media manipulation. And yeah, they can manage their party mechanism, but they can't lead a party in terms of passing legislation which is in any way meaningful. And they're certainly not good at leading countries. And it really does look that Tom mentions it quite. It's quite sinister to read that we could be seeing a return to some of the days when you had dictatorships in European countries, as we did in Portugal, for example, in the 70s, and Spain right up till that time also. Could we really see the return of dictators or even emperors? I mean, really? I mean, my God, can you imagine if European democracy actually regressed to such an extent? So it's real. It's a much needed book, and I think it's terrific that he's done it. And yeah, it does. It says a lot about the fact that politicians are becoming more and more, if you like, disenfranchised from the voter base and vice versa. They're not really speaking for the public anymore. They're speaking for themselves. And the
Yes,
public.
well, we saw that. I mean, as I said, particularly in Nicola Sturgeon's case, where she was pursuing these agendas that were really very niche. The Greens, of course, are niche by themselves, but they had been elevated through the issues in Scotland's electoral system, which is a disaster, and it has allowed people like Lorna Slater, Patrick Harvey, to gain power and get into government and pursue an agenda that is really very different again from what ordinary people are interested in. And yet, if someone did that the other way around, right, and they were imposing from the right, or they were imposing it, they would be called dictators,
Yes.
right?
Yeah,
That's the
fascists
thing. And they
usually.
would be called fascists. Well, so why aren't these people called that? That's perhaps a question for a different day. Right. I do highly recommend Tom's book. It's really very good. Good reading.
It's very
and
good.
real good background for European leadership in general.
Definitely.
Of course, we still haven't heard how Nicola Sturgeon's story will play out. As the rumour mill has gone very quiet, and perhaps that's a good thing. Anyway. Right, coming up, we're going to talk about the SNP's accounts. Exciting stuff, perhaps. Anyway, so, I mean, but this is what we've got, because Holyrood is coming back next Monday, and the circus will resume then. But until then, we have a few questions. So imagine you ran a business whose previous CEO was under police investigation for fraud, and whose previous financial administrator was also arrested for fraud. And it's carrying a deficit of £800,000 and is losing customers hand over fist, then you'd be in charge of the SNP. A little later, David is going to talk about the new CEO of the SNP, Mr. Foote. But for now, let's have a look at the accounts. And I'll put a link in the YouTube comments so you can look at them yourself. It's not particularly complicated to look at the accounts. You don't even need a degree in accountancy to look at these, but the basic facts are fairly straightforward. That basically the party is 800,000 in the red for a year, and actually was 700,000 or something in the
previous year.
In the previous year.
Yeah, I think what everyone has to remember is that these are the 2022 accounts, which were up to the end of last year.
Yep.
So that's before any of the shenanigans started this year. All the scandals with Nicola Sturgeon resigning, and then Peter Murrell and Colin Beattie and Nicola Sturgeon herself being arrested, and also the damaging leadership elections. So this was their fortunes when things were still good and going well. So
not that well, I don't think.
well, okay, there were rumors and so on, but pretty much, all of these things hadn't happened. So we have to take ourselves back to, last year before all of that. I think I noticed was that the overall result is that they had to dig into their accumulated reserves, which fell from nearly 600,000 to minus nearly 220,000.
Wow.
So they're now minus 220,000 in the red.
Yes, but analysis of the accounts is showing some pretty strange things in there. For example, did you know that they spent for their conference? Now, remember, they had a conference in 2022, and it was very poorly attended. Let me see if I can find this picture. Okay, here we go. Here's a picture of it here. Swathes of empty seats as SNP conference suggests time is running out for Nicola Sturgeon. Well, that indeed it was running out. But you can see the venue there, and what they actually did was, that's not the end. They set up this giant screen in the middle of the venue to make it worse. There were some more people behind there, but not that many at all. And but you can look at that, and they spent £339,000 on audiovisual services.
How's that even possible?
I just don't see that. How that's possible. A conference that was only attended by 800 delegates, right? Which means, and of course, that out of 15,000 that P&J Arena can take. So they spent over £400 a head for audiovisual services. I mean, I don't know. Okay, they've got a big TV, which partly isn't included in this. But what's the audiovisual services? A couple of speakers. Okay, and maybe there's a camera. I see a camera there over here, right? But I mean, come on. Really? How is that even?
That doesn't make any sense.
It really doesn't make
I mean,
sense.
for that number of people, I mean, the size of venue you would need, just for 800 people, and the amount of audiovisual that you would need for that, it's absolutely outrageous. But I mean, one of the bigger messages here is when you see crazy things like that, it's like that's what they're doing with their own money. What the hell are they doing with our money?
That's a very good point. And I mean, this is the whole. I mean, this is the whole point of this thing is why we look into the accounts and say, well, if they can't even run their own party, can't keep them on side, they can't even spend effectively, then how can they possibly do that for us? Now, the administration of a party or the executive is different from the people in the party. The party is the product, right? In a way, I mean, Nicola Sturgeon is the product, and the party is the product.
Well, is the party not the producer?
The party is, is the party.
I think they're the producer, and Nicola Sturgeon is one of the products.
Yes, okay,
and the MPs are the products.
Yeah.
Yes, so we have to. I mean, but you still have to say, okay, these are the kind of people that are making these kind of decisions. And Nicola Sturgeon, as the husband, or not the husband, Nicola Sturgeon as the
Freudian slip there.
Yes, as the wife of the what's called CEO, surely would have known more about that. But
as one of the people who has to sign off the accounts, then she has the financial responsibility to make sure she knows what's going on.
And now the next part of that is that conference income was £515,000, and this was actually up by 195,000 from 2021, which was actually an online conference. Anyway, so it's kind of.
Wait now. So they had an online conference
in 2021.
In 2021.
Yes.
Right.
COVID.
Okay.
But they actually managed to get some more money in, but they lost money even though it was an online.
Yeah, because the conference expenditure. Okay, so the conference income was 515,000. Now, where do you think the income comes from?
Well, this is an interesting question.
If there's only 800 people there, how do you make £500,000?
Well, this is the thing. Okay, I've got some figures from an earlier one, not from this year. That's just from 2016. It said that businesses could sponsor a members' lounge for 23,000.
Yeah,
and they could sponsor a dinner for 12,000. And they could have receptions with the SNP's Westminster and Holyrood politicians, 8,000 to go. And lanyards, you could sponsor lanyards, 15,000, and a creche.
15,000 and there's only 800 people there?
Well, I know.
What is that? Is that like £200 a person?
No. So
just for the lanyard, I mean.
Oh, yeah. For the last one, clients paid £644 for every delegate.
For every person who was there.
Right. That's some mighty expensive advertising. And even with that, they didn't make a profit.
Right. People are saying it could be merchandise. But how much do these people, 800 people, buy? £500,000 worth of stuff?
Exactly. That's a lot of caramel wafers. My goodness.
Teddy bears or something. I don't know.
Yeah, it's quite surprising.
Nicola dolls.
Well, we need to get some of those for our voodoo collection.
Oh, I was wondering what you think on that.
You didn't think we'd go there? Okay. Well, we have as we listen, we look there. Anyway. Okay, but that's not all. In addition to us wasting or spending all that money, or not getting too much money and spending too much money at their conference, then it turns out that they spent £470,000 and on IT for 25 employees, which is £30,000 per staff member for computers and software. Mary,
I don't know how that's possible. The only thing I can think of is that they brought in a lot of external consultants, because I used to be one, and I can tell you we're very expensive. David used to be one too.
Yeah, but I know. But you don't.
So if you engage one of the big 5 companies or whatever to do some huge project for you, then I can understand that you could spend that amount of money. But why would they be doing that?
Indeed, for what?
Right. Yeah. Well, there perhaps could
reason?
Be some specialist software for, making lists of voters and so on, but it surely can't be
tracking down vanishing members.
surely can't
Put
be
AI
that
on
expensive. It. Yes.
No, where have they
ChatGPT. Where have all the SNP
members
gone? Talking of that, the filings reveal that almost 10,000 bailed out in the first 6 months of 2023 alone, and well, anyway, just increasing amounts of people leaving the party, and as we said, this is all before that. But one thing that is not in the accounts is the missing 600,000. Where is that? No, it's not.
That's
there.
A whole discussion.
That
in
has
itself,
gone down the back of the sofa, as it were, the metaphorical sofa, but in Sturgeon's house, perhaps.
I think at the end of the year they were left with £46,000 in cash.
Right.
So they're only about 560,000 short
Right.
of what they were supposed to have ring-fenced.
Ring-fenced for a referendum campaign that will
That's it.
never come.
But don't
I-
worry,
I-
guys. That money is woven into the accounts and it's reachable, and they can get it within one day.
Yeah,
Good luck with that, guys. Okay.
yeah, it's so woven in you can't see it.
If it's so, how do you reach it in one day if it's woven into the accounts? I mean,
You don't exactly.
that means it's distributed through everything.
Quite.
How do you bring it back?
The two sentences are entirely
You know-
contradictory. They can't
You know,
be
what it comes down to is they basically have no understanding, or they're completely choosing to ignore what ring-fenced means.
indeed.
I've seen other things from them, and it seems to suggest that they actually don't even know what ring-fenced means. Because that whole discussion about the 30,000 or 300,000 that was taken from agriculture, or 30, maybe it's 30 million.
33 million it was, yeah, that's right.
Right, okay. I knew it was a 3 in it somewhere. 33 million pounds that was taken from the agriculture budget and put somewhere else. And then they were saying, no, it hasn't, it's ring fenced. It's like, well, but you've put it somewhere else. You haven't.
Yeah, quite.
And they're saying, no, it's still ring fenced.
Maybe the clue is in the fence part of it. It's a fence.
It's been
around
fenced.
it, building me a fence, as Abba would say. That's right.
One interesting point that was made was, the company is technically insolvent. When your liabilities, your total liabilities exceed your total assets, you are insolvent, and
you
can be closed down. But the SNP is lucky in a way, because apparently over £750,000 of its liabilities relate to dividends, which are payable to local branches on the basis of they are supposed to receive 25% of membership income. What the SNP going to do? They're just not going to pay it. That's how they're going to do it. So
they're not going to pay that, and that will affect, of course, their membership groups around which they spent a long time. And if you go onto the Nationalist groups, they're like, "Oh no, Alex Salmond did this great job, Nicola Sturgeon's ruined it all." I mean, they're greeting about it.
Just adding on to what David has said about trading as insolvent. Are you allowed to trade if you're insolvent? Are you allowed to sign contracts and make deals?
You've got to prove that you're a going concern. Is the way I find it.
And in the notes, in the thing, it says they're a going concern because they can take this money that goes to branches. Now, whether people believe that or not is a different matter.
Right.
It does mean that if it comes to pass that they are not able to pay things, and if creditors come chapping at the door and they're unable to pay, then that might come back to bite them.
Well, yeah, I mean, I'd love to know how they're going to run an election campaign when they've got no money to send to branches. How's that going to work then, guys? So yeah, you're going to have to be on a lot of voluntary workers doing it for literally nothing. So
well, on that note, if I move ahead, Mark, to looking at 2023 accounts, which is this year, of course.
Right.
So as we know, everything that's happened in 2023 and membership numbers continue to tank, and all the scandals and God knows everything else that's going on. There's a couple of things that have made the situation even worse. So the having the leadership contest this year has cost them £160,000.
Oh yeah, I saw that.
So if they were 46,000, if that's all they had left before, and they've just had to spend 160,000, now of course they've got some money coming in, but that's going to hurt a lot. So that's not even looking forward to the following year. But the SNP Treasurer Stuart McDonald says that they will continue to be concerted action to raise money to back Katie Loudon to win Rutherglen and Hamilton West. So I don't know how they plan to fight that by-election, never mind the elections which are coming up. And he said, but he's very hopeful and optimistic. He says the second half of the year includes the St Andrew's draw and dinner, as well as conference income. The only thing wrong with that is that they had that last year.
Yeah.
Well,
so the conference income last year was actually the minus.
Yeah, it's been minus since 2018.
So how's the conference income? And there's St Andrew's draw and dinner. I mean, they have that every year. It's not like this is a new event that's suddenly going to bring in a lot of cash.
I wonder about who these donors are, that are putting in this money. It's like, I mean, it's a dead loss. I mean, these people was the conference after the Supreme Court thing? I'm not sure. But anyway, the
conference is October.
October. And that was November, right? So, right, but I mean, there must be the donors must be thinking, "What the hell is going on with this? This is rubbish." I don't know.
Maybe they're getting something out of it.
Well, that's a very good point. And actually, I've got this wee clip here. Oh, I just got rid of it, of course. That was the one I got rid of it. Anyway, which is all about cash for favours at conference, which is what was happening before. Or I didn't say it was what was happening. That was what was suspected to be happening
The suspicion
before.
this week was that people were getting seats in return for donations. They were getting pledges of you actually can get a seat here if your campaign people or your family or whoever put enough money up. I mean,
Well, that's what we expect, isn't it? If I put in,
Was that Westminster seats or Holyrood seats? I think it was Westminster.
Yeah,
I think it was MPs.
Of course, yeah. Wow.
That was, if you're wanting in for the money, then it doesn't really matter, does it? Anyway, right, okay. We'll move on from this one. If you can also help support the show by buying these amazing majority T-shirts, which I'm modelling here. These are fantastic, actually, really good, and you'll be the talk of the steamy, as it were, if you go out in one of these. Really good and reasonably priced, all on our website too. We also have the amazing. They may take our lives, but they will not take our camper van T-shirt. That is, I'm going to put on here as well. There it is. There you can buy that from the Majority Shop. We'll be back in a second when David is going to be talking about Murray Foote. Okay, let's get rid of that. Let's get back to the other wee bit. All right. Okay, so back in a sec. Right. Okay, David, you're up.
Okay. So, guys, in the last week, we've seen the appointment of Murray Foote as the new SNP Chief Executive Officer, replacing Peter Morrell. Now, it struck me that some of you might not know too much about Murray Foote. He is quite a veteran, you might say. So let's just have a very quick look at his career and the path that has taken him to becoming the SNP's head honcho. Foote is from Dundee, one of the famous only two yes cities in the referendum. Worked in journalism from a young age, and in 1991 he joined the Daily Record. And after a brief 23 years, he became editor. And he was editor at the time of the independence referendum. Now, some of you will remember The Vow, which is the famous Daily Record front page showing this article, Mark. I don't know if you have it there.
Yeah, it's there. So it's on the screen.
Yeah, I've got it there.
Brilliant, right, got it. Yeah, brilliant, fantastic. So this is saying the Scottish voters, don't worry. We three here, the by undersigned, David Cameron, Nick Clegg and Ed Miliband, pledge that Holyrood will always have the final say in matters of key importance to Scottish voters, such as the Scottish NHS, etc., etc. So this article was run as part of the Daily Record's support for a no vote. They actually did quite openly support turning down independence at the time. And it was timed to appear after the yes side had taken the lead in an opinion post for the first time in the campaign.
Was that a one-time thing, or was there a couple of votes like that?
I think what they did was I can't remember there being any. I think it was only one time that they got the lead. I don't remember it being one.
Yeah. Right.
But so Salmond, of course, credited The Vow with ensuring the referendum was won, and they referred to a lot about nationalists still to this day talk about The Vow and how The Vow was broken. It wasn't at all.
No, it's nonsense.
Exactly. So, following this, Foote left the Daily Record in 2018 to become the SNP's head of media, naturally enough, after running a campaign for a media group to stop independence going ahead. So immediately he excused himself by saying, "Oh yeah, of course, I've always believed in independence." Really? So in that case, why did you print The Vow then? And he said, "Well, I did that because I was acting on behalf of the Daily Record's readership. What, by telling them something you didn't believe because your bosses told you to." That's impressive, Murray. Good for you.
That's really not on. I don't think he must have believed it. It's as simple as that. We worked in media many years, ran a news site, and the first thing you have to do is the number one thing you do is be honest with your readers. And you don't, journalists are tough with that. They don't like that kind of thing. If someone says to you from above, you have to do this, they'll fight it. So I don't believe that for a second. I think that the vow in general was an unnecessary appeasement. It didn't change the result. If you look at there's various polls that asked this question. It didn't change the result. I'd like to look at that polling in a bit more detail to see who did it and what it was. I wasn't involved in this at the time. But I mean, to make this kind of decision on the basis of one poll just smacks of appeasement and fear. And all that led to was the vow. It wasn't necessary to do it, but the thing about it now is that it gave the idea to the nationalists that they can always be appeased, irrespective of what they do. So then it's always in their interest to try and agitate more, because there'll always be another vow of another kind. And what makes it worse is that people in the Scottish Conservative Party, particularly, indulge this. And went through to the vow became the Smith Commission, and the Smith Commission recommended stuff like more powers for the Scottish Government, the idea that the Scottish Parliament would be permanent, whatever that means, and all this kind of stuff. And the people on that committee who were Conservatives didn't fight it at all. They're like, oh yeah, give us more powers. They'll never be used by the Nationalists against us. Absolutely no good at all. So the correct decision would have been not to offer anything extra in the vow, and then enact legislation immediately after the referendum win, which would have happened anyway, that the UK is a unitary state and the minority nationals in one part of the country would never again be able to hold the rest of the country to ransom ever again. And this has been Foote has been a cause of this. I mean, I was working for the Masters, as it were, but they are all together were just an exercise in unnecessary appeasement, and we're still suffering the effects of it.
I agree. I mean, we see it. You refer to most of the guys who write in the Times as the appeasement division, because they still do it to this day. They keep saying these things like nationalism and independence is a perfectly legitimate respect.
Yes, exactly.
It's nothing of the sort when it makes absolutely no economic sense. I mean, it's just ludicrous. Anyway, so that was the vow. Anyway, so the vow hangs over Foote to this day. Now, earlier this year, of course, Foote left the SNP under a little bit of a cloud after he stated publicly, wrongly, that a reported drop in SNP membership was way off, tens of thousands off, he said. Well, it was entirely true. SNP membership had fallen by 30,000. He flounced out the party, saying that he had been misled and he'd been undermined, so he left. But even after he left, he continued to comment on SNP matters. For example, when Sturgeon was arrested and the tents were erected and all the stuff, Foote went straight into the Daily Record in an article stating that the criminal investigation might be a wild goose chase, and he called the arrest and the circumstances of the arrest a grotesque circus. And he actually said, I'm willing to bet £5 that no charges will arise. Now, just a few months later, he's back inside the SNP as chief exec. SNP's own in-house HR, human resources expert, Kirsten Oswald, called him an exceptional candidate in a strong field. Yeah, I bet it was. So if I were an SNP right now, the first question I'd be asking is whether this career journalist, and he is a career journalist, he's been in journalism for over 30 years, is he still acting on behalf of his bosses by stating what he claims to be untruths under instruction? Is that what he's doing, as he did with the vow? Whereas if I worked for Police Scotland, I'd be saying, hang on a sec, you're now the chief exec of this party. We are undertaking an investigation into your predecessor and her and his husband, his wife.
You did it there.
I did it exactly.
It's not that easy, you know.
Exactly. And these are fluidity. It's very big. But you'd be asking, hang on a minute, you've just made comments on the likely outcome of Operation Branchthorn. Isn't that interference in a live police investigation, Mr. Chief Exec?
Yeah, no, it's ridiculous. It's totally nonsense.
When you distill it down, guys, what you've got here is Nicola Sturgeon and Peter Morrell, who were a very successful party leader and chief exec combination, have been replaced by Hamza Yousaf, an ex-journalist who famously headed up a media campaign for a no vote in 2014. And it's about to lose a Westminster by-election, I think for the first time in its history. I don't think the SNP's ever lost a Westminster by-election before. They've won plenty of them, and then they've lost them in general elections, but I don't think they've lost a by-election. So by any measure, you're seeing a massive drop-off here, and he's coming into the party at a disastrous time. So I would wish him good luck, but just like he said when he wrote the vow, I wouldn't mean it, so I won't bother.
Very good. But I mean, surely, wait a minute, wasn't he was in charge of memberships and something, right?
Yep.
Right? Membership dropped over the past, 3 years. So that's not a very good thing to put in your resume. Yes, I think I should be the CEO of this organisation because under my auspices, the membership has dropped by a third.
Well, as I shall talk about later on, what they're always saying is, but if I wasn't there, it would have been worse.
Oh, that's very good. That is very. But I mean, talking of worse, does this guy have? Talking about his CV. I mean, what are his financial qualifications? He's a journalist, right?
Yep.
And I mean, he's not a guy who's run an organisation, mind you. 25 people isn't that many, I suppose. But one would think that you would want to. Let's say, if I was, putting a job on Indeed, for example, for new CEO of the SNP, number one, financial management might be number one. Two, good marketing ability, and so on. But like this, not guy who already lost lots of members.
Yeah,
it seems a bit of a weird one there.
Well, I don't know how much of a pool of choice they've got these days.
Puddle, as it were.
Okay, the puddle then.
A drop.
The puddle of choice.
An atom of H2O.
So maybe no one else was willing to take it.
Well, I just wonder if his wife had applied, because it's quite normal to have a husband and wife team running the SNP these days. But...
well, I would say about husband and wife teams, but sometimes it's great. Amazing. Look at this, for example. Here we are here. But I just think, I don't wish Murray Foote any success at all. His disastrous vow got us years of trouble, and now he's in a no-win situation, which of his own making. He has, anyone who is on our side doesn't like him, and anyone on their side now doesn't like him either. So it's a bit of a weird situation. Is there really that few candidates that would stand up for this job? Yes.
Well, I don't see how they're going to turn anything around. I mean, the accounts that we've just been talking about were 2022. When the 2023 accounts come in and everything that's happened then, membership numbers will be down, losses will be bigger.
They'll have the Rutherglen by-election,
and the by-election, and that's going to cost them money and everything else. They're going to lose that. The situation is going to go from bad to worse.
Yeah, absolutely. From worse to terrible, from terrible to catastrophic, and it could go on.
Well, someone's talking about the wage packet. Maybe it came with a good wage packet. I did notice in their accounts that they said that they were looking for someone. I think they'd put the salary up from 79,000 to 95,000.
Well, it's good money if you can get it, money, I suppose. You won't get that money. It's very difficult to get that money in a normal company. We've talked about that in the past.
Right, and if they can't attract somebody in a salary of effectively £100,000, other than a nice journalist. My goodness,
rubbish.
I think also called it an open and what was it? Rigorous
yes.
Selection process.
It was rigorous. There was only one person, so that's probably why.
Yes.
Right.
I should have applied for that.
You should have applied, Mark. Definitely.
I could turn it around, I tell you.
I believe you.
Right, anyway, on that note, we will move on to Mary's going to talk about minimum unit alcohol pricing and its disaster in just a second.
Well, actually, I'm going to talk about minimum unit pricing of alcohol. But first of all, I'm actually going to talk about alcohol deaths.
Yeah.
The news came out this week. It has been 5 years since SNP introduced the minimum unit pricing for alcohol. So, we'd be hoping to see that maybe alcohol deaths had come down in Scotland. But we didn't have an awful lot of faith that would actually happen. And sadly, this week, the figures published by the National Records of Scotland found that deaths due to alcohol in Scotland hit a 14-year high. There were 1,276 deaths caused by misuse of alcohol. The increase was driven by a sharp rise in deaths among women to a new peak of 440. Now, the SNP, they had claimed that hiking up the minimum unit of alcohol, the minimum price of alcohol per unit to 50 pence would stem the crisis, but this has had no effect. So what I'm going to talk about is not just these sad results, but how civil servants and the Scottish Government conspired to mislead the public on this very serious issue to suit their own agenda, that this policy is working when clearly it's not. So we cannot trust our institutions to be truthful with us. So when the results came out, as well as being sad, I was also very surprised because the results were very much at odds with what we were told back in June about Scotland's, we'll call it the MUP, which is the minimum unit pricing for alcohol. Back in June, we were told that this was a world leading success. Alcohol Policy Minister Eleanor Whittam cited 40 independent research publications and said recent research demonstrated MUP had saved hundreds of lives. Well, they've had to, behind the scenes, they've had to quietly amend that figure to say it's, instead of it demonstrated that had saved hundreds of lives, they've said it's estimated that it saved hundreds of lives.
Right.
So they're changing the language behind the scenes. But, you know, everyone had already taken note. And of those 40 separate studies that were cited before as being how they had demonstrated this, actually, there was no evidence from those studies that the policy had worked. It didn't lead to fewer A&E attendances. The MUP did not lead to fewer ambulance call-outs, and it didn't lead to less alcohol-related crimes. Among the heaviest drinkers, there was no clear evidence that MUP had led to an overall reduction in alcohol consumption, although they said it did put a financial strain on a lot of people. And the heaviest drinking men actually consumed more alcohol after the policy was introduced. There was only one of these studies that showed any. So, one out of the 40 of these studies that showed any positive result for MUP, and that was because it was a hypothetical guess at what might have happened if MUP had not been introduced. But of course, that's the 1 in 40 result that the SNP then fixed on.
Yeah.
So, Tory MSP Dr. Sandish Galen, he said this is a damning verdict on how SNP ministers have tried to manipulate findings surrounding their flagship minimum unit pricing policy to suit their own agenda. Is anyone surprised, guys?
Not even remotely. I'm appalled. I'm not surprised, though. I mean, to dupe the stats, as they say in this way, that's so cynical, particularly when you're talking about people dying. I mean, that's really is appalling. And Effie Dean's mentioned it today. They're talking here about modelling. They're not talking about actual results. Modelling used in COVID, which they aren't results. That's flagrant abuse of statistics, and in such a crucial issue that really is unforgivable. Seriously, that's dreadful.
Well, that's pretty much what Anne-Marie Ward of Favour UK was saying. Anne-Marie's been on the show a couple of times. We like talking to her. And she said, civil servants retroactively, now remember this is civil servants, it's not just like MPs, it's the civil servants retroactively altered a press release casting doubts on the claims made by Public Health Scotland regarding minimum unit pricing. This discovery shakes our confidence in institutions, and when we lose trust in public institutions, it leads to scepticism and a sense of uncertainty about the information we receive from these sources. This erosion of trust can have serious consequences. Indeed,
yes.
Anne-Marie.
Yeah,
exactly.
She wrote a report on it. I think this is it here, Unmasking the Mirage, Evaluating Scotland's Minimum Pricing Policy for Alcohol. I think, of course, when it first came in, many people said this isn't going to make any difference. What's going to happen simply is if you're addicted to alcohol and it is an addiction, then you're going to, buy it anyway to the expense of something else. You're not going to buy food. You're not going to feed your kids. You're not going to do all the stuff because you're addicted to it. That's the problem here. And the addiction is what needs to be treated, not the pricing. And this is I think Anne-Marie was talking, well, she talks about drugs, of course, primarily, but it's the same thing. I was reading some horror stories about people basically not being able to get into rehab at all in Scotland.
It's really difficult.
It's extremely difficult, and they're maybe end up homeless or really in a bad state. And I don't. It's difficult to imagine the story is all about this father actually who used to be an addict, and he'd actually been to rehab and actually got out of it, came out and was okay for many years. But his son was just drinking all the time, just constant, and basically his son ended up dying because he couldn't get into rehab. And it's just it's these type of things, is minimum pricing going to help that? I don't think so. It's not. It's not the thing. It's not to do with that. There needs to be more a more nuanced solution.
It's a health issue,
not made for headlines. Really, and easy solutions. They're always into what they think is easy solutions.
Well, the Spectator, they've done an article this week, and they're basically asking, is there any amount of evidence that could convince the public health lobby that one of their bright ideas didn't work? What would it take for them to admit that they failed?
Here.
So rather than, fudging the results and trying to, they're trying to convince us that black is white. It's like, we know it's not working. The results come out and in black and white and say, this is not working. And they just keep going on with it. So the Spectator is saying it's time to abandon a policy that has cost Scottish consumers hundreds of millions of pounds, because it's us that are paying for it, and indeed start focusing on dependent drinkers who need help.
Yes, that's what it's about, and it's the same with the drugs thing as well. They come up with all these like band-aid solutions. Decriminalisation, we'll have to do this. Nobody cares about that. If you're waiting for a rehab bed, do you care that drugs are going to be decriminalised? No, you don't care about that. It might help, but somebody may or may not help. That's different, but it's a different issue. People actually need help now. If you add the drug deaths and the alcohol deaths, 2,000, I don't know, I didn't add it up, but just 2,000, 3,000 people a year.
Yeah.
Dying of that type of stuff, you're like, come on, this isn't, that's not right.
Dreadful record. What a legacy to leave. It's appalling, dreadful. Even nationalist supporters, Jim Spence in the, what do you call it, the President Journal today said, there's no point talking glibly about safe consumption rooms. You've got to get people off this stuff in terms of drugs, that is, and in terms of alcohol.
And here we have, I don't know, this is the kind of level of debate we have. This person on here, at least the Scottish Government are trying to reduce drug and alcohol deaths. And what does Westminster do? It's that the drug deaths here are 5 times the UK. For fuck's sake. I mean, really? You get a grip. It's not Westminster's problem here. What it is the Scottish government's problem.
Actually.
Yeah, it's absolutely ridiculous. It's shocking. And what we suggest is they actually do something about it.
Here. And this is the thing that Anne-Marie gets so annoyed about. Anne-Marie, I don't know if you noticed, was targeted by the guy, I wouldn't name him, but the guy who's the current SNP poster boy for safe consumption rooms or for decriminalisation. And he's literally targeting Anne-Marie by saying to her sponsors, why are you backing this woman? My God, she's trying to get people into recovery, you absolute fool. She's doing the right thing, where all you're doing is pushing yet more drug-related, drug-centric solutions. It's dreadful. And this is all at the behest of the SNP, which of course runs the Scottish NHS. Appalling, dreadful, and absolute blight on Scotland, these people. Dreadful, and it's got to stop, because people are dying. People are dying in their thousands, and it's got to stop. Seriously.
Yeah, it's not good. And it is what, it says, oh, you're swearing shocking. It is. People are dying because of
what's shocking is the number of people dying.
Policy. For God's sake, get your finger out and actually help these people.
That being said, we do apologise for any bad language, but
I don't apologise for bad language in this case. I really don't.
People are dying.
I don't. It's not. It's people. It's not that people are dying. It's people are dying unnecessarily compared with other solutions in other parts of the country. And these people have the cheek to say, "But it's Westminster's fault." How dare they? I mean, just how dare they?
Well, she's saying it's reserved to Westminster.
It's not reserved to
Drug
Westminster.
Treatment is not reserved at all.
And even if it is not at all, and if that was the case, the results between the UK, England, and Scotland would be the same if it was reserved. For God's sake. Anyway,
if we just did what the rest of the UK was doing, we could be 7 times better.
Exactly.
7 times less deaths.
Right. And that would be what the Tories are doing. I don't care if it's the Tories or Labour or Lib Dems or even SNP, but just get your finger out, make a commission, do something and help these people. Put the money there instead of other bollocks that you put it on.
Let's just say one thing though, Karen, nobody's lying, okay? Nobody is lying. Drug policy in terms of what is legal and illegal is a reserved issue. How you treat drug users is down to the individual NHS. So don't come on here and accuse us of lying, okay? At least be factual if you're going to state something, okay? Drug abuse is not reserved. It's not, okay? So don't say that because you're wrong. Okay, so just to clarify that for you.
Right. Anyway, okay. So, move. Mary, you got to finish this section, or you're done?
Well, I was just going to say that the minimum unit pricing has a 5-year sunset clause, which so the government has until next May to prove the policy has worked. Otherwise, it should be scrapped. But very few of us suspect that it actually will be scrapped, because if they're just going to try and pull out a result from 1 in 40 that was basically a made up result and then use that to justify it, then what hope do we have? And there are other groups like the Scotland state funded temperance pressure groups are calling for the MUP to be increased. And the SNP are looking at a further increase of 80 pence.
I mean, so what happens then? The increasing it, the price, led to more deaths. So increasing it more, is that going to lead to more deaths?
Right.
What's the logic that's going to lead to less deaths? There's nothing there.
Yeah.
Right? So just more utter nonsense.
Well, we've got alcohol deaths are up, suicide rates are up, and homelessness is up. And Scotland deserves better.
Right.
Yes, it certainly does. It deserves better than this, and hopefully we can get them out later. It's a difficult topic, and it needs a multifaceted solution. Actually, one of the things the Tories are proposing is a right to recovery bill. I think Anne-Marie's behind that as well, and that means that you have a right to rehabilitation, and I think that's reasonable. These people really can't help it. You like to think, I think, and what Anne-Marie said was that the Scottish Government looks down on them and thinks that they're somehow in this situation of their own volition. Well, okay, maybe the first few bad decisions were theirs, but after that, it takes over and they can't deal with it. And these people really need help. It's not fair for them to die. Is that what you want? You want people to die? That's what it is. To look after the people. That's the whole point of government, isn't it? Supposed to be look after the most vulnerable people in our society. Right. Anyway, moving on. Okay. We are going to move on to the next bit, which is the bit you've all been waiting for. If I can find the wee thing. Okay, here we go. Yes, it's the highlight of the week. It is coming up. It is Zoomer of the Week. Right. Okay. So my nomination for Zoomer of the Week is Police Scotland.
Ooh.
Yeah, because today they've charged a man for calling Patrick Harvey a deviant. Came on the back of this exchange when a passerby called Patrick Harvey a deviant. Okay. All right. Let's have a look at this.
Was subjected to repeated abuse, the man calling him time and time again.
This is a bit of introduction from the
quite unpleasant.
BBC.
I've done a lot of these interviews.
Big disclaimer.
Quite hostile. We've got the audio of all of this on tape, and we can have a look now. And we should say that some viewers may find some of the terms used offensive.
Vote any colour except his colour.
Well, I think you've got a bit of your work cut out there winning that vote. Right, Fergus Ewing. I want to ask about Fergus Ewing.
Right, what's the happening? You're a deviant.
You're a bigot.
You're a deviant.
Right. Okay. Big questions about this. I think the main thing here. Police Scotland spokesperson confirmed following a report of homophobic comments, a 59-year-old man has been arrested and charged. A report will be sent to Procurator Fiscal. The question here are: why are the police so sure it's homophobic abuse? According to Google, deviant means departing from usual or accepted standards, and especially in social or sexual behaviour. But so are they saying then that being deviant is homophobic abuse? Does that mean they think homosexuality is deviant? Right, that's the thing there. Right, deviant can mean many things. It can be social. It could be social deviance. It could be whatever. So if someone called me a deviant, though, I mean, that may happen. I would ask myself, do my politics deviate from the norm? No. And does my behaviour deviate from the norm? No. And I'd shrug it off. But instead, Patrick decided to call his accuser a bigot. Now, why the police aren't investigating that is a different matter. Is that abuse as well? That's the thing.
I don't actually get what the charges here by calling someone a deviant. I mean, isn't a deviant more likely to be a pedophile or someone who indulges in weird sexual practices?
Well, some people might say that, but Patrick Harvey doesn't, at least as far as we know, do that. He claims to be a bisexual, which isn't a deviant thing. And so the question then is, are his politics deviant? Some people would say yes, supports men going into women's changing rooms and queer theory, but that's an opinion, isn't it? In that case. That's not abuse. That's an opinion. So basically, the part that's supposed to be homophobic abuse isn't actually abuse, right? Because being gay isn't deviant,
Isn't
and the
deviant.
other part is that it's I lost my track. But anyway,
Well, a lot of our viewers are saying that Patrick Harvey has called other people deviant
yeah, I've
himself.
seen that. I've seen that, but you can call your mates if he's supposedly in an in group, right, of gay men, and they all call each other deviants as a laugh. Then okay, fine.
Well, maybe it was one of his friends that was shouting at
I
him.
know who it was, guys. I don't know if you know Duncan Hothersall, who's the
Yes.
the Labour campaign guy, who's also gay. He happened to have put up something on Twitter, a picture of a thumb, which looked a tiny little bit like male genitalia. And then he said, just to set the context here, I'm in a straight bar, to which Harvey said, deviant.
Yes, but I mean, I think that's the thing about it. What's the line? Joking between friends, or political opinion, or what homophobic abuse? Wait a minute. What is? So who's making the decision there?
Exactly. If you're saying you called him deviant, therefore that's homophobic, that means in your mind, Mr. Editing Officer, you think homosexuality is deviant.
Yeah.
Right.
What you're saying, really?
Yeah.
I mean, that's a bit sick, isn't it?
Isn't it?
Yes.
No, exactly. It's like, I mean, Lenny Bruce said this. I don't know if I can say this here. Lenny Bruce was arrested once for using the word cocksucker. Okay, apologies. And he said, well, it was. I was told that I was using a term for a favoured homosexual practice, and he said, "Well, that's not homosexual to me. It relates to any woman I know or would love or would marry." So
Yes.
he's right, because it's just a sexual practice. Doesn't mean it's homosexual. And so this is, if you try to if you legislate against people using words, it will fall down everything.
Well, this is the problem with this whole hate crime laws that are still supposed to come in at some point, and you'll be arrested for expressing word. And surely, if Harvey should be the bigger man, so to speak. He's a bit small, isn't he? But you should, and just say, yeah, whatever, mate. Whatever.
Exactly.
Fine, and move on. But to get the police involved and so on isn't that. But I think the blame here lies whether you think Patrick Harvey is deviant or not. That's immaterial. The police should not be involved in this matter.
No.
As simple as that. Meanwhile,
I mean, they haven't got time to investigate robberies or people being assaulted. So
crimes go unpunished. So that's that. Anyway, so moving on. It's going to be David next.
Excuse me. Yep.
Where are we? What's my thing? Right, there you go.
My candidate for Game of the Week, unusually, is a recent ex-UK political party leader. Is Jeremy Corbyn, because at the Edinburgh Fringe last week, in the Freemasons Hall, of all places, I bet Corbyn loved that, he was being interviewed in there, and of course, he was asked, so what do you think about a second Scottish independence referendum? And never one to miss a chance to damage the United Kingdom. Corbyn was like, yes, I do support the principle of having a referendum. I hope it happens soon. I suspect the British government will try and oppose it. I hope a Labour majority would also support a referendum. I think it's a democratic right to decide your own future. My view is if the people of Scotland want to... Oh, shut up, you old fool.
Yes.
Here's what you think. Anyway, as a reminder here, Corbyn has been kicked out of the Labour Party, literally thrown out, which he led until 3 years ago, for insisting that anti-Semitism in the party had been grossly exaggerated. Yeah, okay, whatever. So in addition to his lifelong support of the IRA, Hamas, Russia, expansionism, he supports everything that is anti-British. It's just appalling. He is dreadful. It's also worth remembering that in the last general election, Corbyn led the Labour Party to its worst electoral performance in a general election since the 1930s. Now, I've mentioned the tactical voting guide, which I've drafted, and I've actually made a recommendation on each one of the 57 seats. And of course, you have to look at previous general election results. The scale of the Corbyn factor, which you see, is staggering all across Scotland. I haven't even looked at England, so I'm not going to get involved there. But in seats which were staunchly Labour right up until 2015, under Corbyn's leadership, the Labour vote literally collapsed. And it is almost impossible to exaggerate what a total disaster Corbyn was as Labour leader. And it's only now, literally now, that his malign influence in the party and on UK politics is beginning to wear off. It's true. I'm adamant. I will stand by this. Corbyn is far and away the worst leader in Labour's history by a great distance. And the day he exits the UK political stage cannot come quickly enough. He's been a curse on the Labour Party and on UK politics. He's been a disastrous performer. He has been an influence of such poison that I can't speak lowly enough of the man.
Well,
And it's she's still desperate to dance.
Labour with just one seat, MP in Scotland. That's what the result was, right?
Just-
And he would like that guy to probably lose his job as well, because
you're right.
if there's no distinction, if Labour offers a referendum, then what's the point in voting for Labour? Because you might as well vote. You should just vote for the SNP, right? So it doesn't make any sense. You have to create clear water between the parties and then make people give people a choice. And the choice is very simple. You want to get rid of the Tories in Westminster? You vote for us.
Quite. That's exactly what it is. And now, thank heavens, Labour is once again a plausible party to vote for in Scotland. Corbyn is long gone, and I
well, it still has a ways to go, and the Labour Party in general. But more people are shifting over there. Mary, you're going to be next. Just a second. Right.
My Zimmer of the Week is the SNP Scottish Government for their pettiness in refusing to cooperate with hanging free portraits of King Charles III in public buildings to mark the coronation and replace the portraits of the late Queen.
Okay.
So the UK government, they are paying the £8 million cost to distribute the portraits to all schools, police stations, courts and other public buildings. But the Scottish government are refusing to give them a list of these public buildings to send the portraits to. I mean, how petty can you be?
Right.
So, the £8 million is for the whole of the UK. That's not the Scottish portion. That's probably only about 9% of that going by population.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's not even costing Scotland anything.
Right.
And the project is designed to celebrate the nation's ultimate public servant. And now, whether you're into the monarchy or not, King Charles III is the head of state for the whole of the United Kingdom.
Mm-hmm.
And in most countries in the world, you have your head of state in public buildings.
Mm-hmm.
America, they probably have them everywhere. But the Nats have said it's a waste of money. They should know about wastes of money, I have to say. And the Greens have compared the project to North Korea and Game of Thrones.
Well, Game of Thrones? That sounds quite good. Well, that's good.
There be dragons, we might have dragons involved.
Now.
Yeah, I know. So it's really, extremely petty of them. The SNP's opponents have said, unsurprisingly, the SNP told the Sunday Mail as well. Do you want to hear this? They want to hang a picture of one of the wealthiest men in the country over the heads of children in the poorest communities in Scotland, and we will not have any part of it. There's the offer. God's sake.
Petty nonsense. It's really. Their behaviour is enough to turn you into a monarchist. That's the thing. That's really the thing. I was ambivalent about the monarchy before. I still am to some extent. But as Mary says, the person is the head of state. Right, he's the head of state. If you're in America, President Biden's picture would be up there,
everywhere,
and that's a political appointee, right? So the office is more important than the person in that case.
Well, I think in this case that it's just really, the SNP and the Greens are basically just divorced from public opinion. The great public of Scotland, as we saw at the late Queen's death, the majority of people in Scotland have some kind of respect for the monarchy and the fact that these people are, the head of state.
Yes.
So,
right.
Don't know what's going to happen.
I'm supposed to decide this.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. It's a very tough one. I think it's got. There's this nonsense about the picture. I don't know about that one.
No, I would agree.
So it's between Corbyn and Harvey. No, it's not between Harvey. Police Scotland.
Police, yeah. And
Corbyn's always been an arse, so I have to choose my one. I'm going to choose police. I'm going to choose Police Scotland. Corbyn. I think it could be a draw. Actually, I think it's a draw.
Oh, right. So what have we got then? We've got Corbyn and
Police Scotland.
And
what a mixture.
We haven't had a draw before.
No, I can't make up my mind between the two of those. Right. Okay, thank you for being on the show with us tonight. We run a wee bit long, but glad to see you're still with us. We will be, what does it say here? Oh, yes.
We'll be back next week.
We'll be back next week. And the usual schedule, it's Wednesday at 7 p.m. Leave you with the thought of the week, which is that Holyrood will be back next week and the circus will continue. Elect clowns, get a circus, as the saying goes. How about we try to elect better people? Just better people. Well, let's try and do that. Well, we're so happy to have you all on the show. We will see you again next week. Thank you very much for being with us all. Thank you, David. Thank you, Mary.
Thank you, everyone, for your comments.
Right, yeah, thanks everyone. And yes, we were on the right side of that person who kept insisting she was right and we were wrong. We're not wrong at all, guys. Trust me.
All right.
Great.
All right.
See you next
Thank
week.
you. Thank you all. See you all next week.
Bye.